And welcome in to podcast number 8, as we're honored to have with us a military veteran, longtime NIU band director, and all-around good person, actually, Mike Embrey, joining us right now. Mike, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Thank you for taking time to visit with us. This is very exciting for me because, Mike, you and I go way back. I've been here in town for about 25 years, and I remember meeting you early on, and your many endeavors to help not only the community, but more importantly, the veterans here.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, I came here 50 years ago to be the band director at NIU, and was going to teach for a few years and leave, and fell in love with the community, fell in love with the university, stayed and enjoyed being the band director.
We're going to talk about that. Of course, you were the youngest band director in the state and the country at the time.
Yes, I came out of the military, and I toured professionally for 2 years, and then I took the job at NIU. I was only 27, and I had no clue what I was doing, but it was so much fun.
And we're also going to talk today about the Veterans Fund recognition efforts and how far you guys have come and what you're still hoping to do. But as we heard in the intro here, we heard the Washington Post song, and I used to do that whenever I talked to somebody from the military. But I was thinking about music and military through the years. And when I talk to my wife and when I say the Revolutionary War, what do you think of music-wise? And she immediately said the fife and drum. And of course, many of us can picture that, Mike. And I always remember wondering as a kid, why aren't those two carrying rifles instead of carrying a fife and drum? But tell us about the importance. And then, of course, in the Civil War, you had When Johnny Comes Marching Home, the great marching songs. World War II, so many wonderful songs, Glenn Miller and stuff there. World War I over there. I remember one of my favorite movies is Yankee Doodle Dandy, and George M. Cohan gets the Medal of Honor from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and as he's walking down the steps of the White House, he does that little tap dance thing. And do you remember that in the movie?
Absolutely.
And he was told not to do that, and he did it anyway.
But you couldn't keep his feet still.
And then ultimately we got to Vietnam War, which I asked my wife the same thing, and she immediately thought of Good Morning America. Good Morning Vietnam.
Good Morning Vietnam, correct. Robin Williams. It was a great point, as well as the TV show with Korea. So I mean, we've had a lot.
Oh, MASH. That's right. Yeah,
MASH. I mean, that was probably the best way to honor and go. And people think back about that very much so. And
we were talking about the Revolutionary War, but more importantly, the Civil War, where every company had their own band with them, right? I mean, they would not carry guns. They'd have the band. I remember the great story about them taking a break in the war, and the guys from the South band were playing Southern, or the guys from the North band were playing Dixie, and the guys on the South were playing I don't know what Northern song, but it's really been significant through the years.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned early on about the Revolutionary War. There is a drum and fife corps assigned to the United States Army, stationed in Washington, D.C., and they still dress in the red coat and the pointed hats and the little breeches with the white socks and black shoes. And I think there's 12 pipers and like 5 drummers in that group. And they still do ceremonial activity.
Is that right?
Yes.
And they served a purpose as well. I mean, marching, right? You kept the cadence, the marching with the drum, right?
Absolutely. It's called the Old Guard. And they do a lot of parade functions and celebrations.
And then ultimately, the ultimate song for me is Taps, and I know for a lot of people it is. And I was reading a biography of you, and it was a few years old, so it said you had performed Taps 1,500 times roughly. And I'm guessing it's a lot more than that now, Mike.
Way over 2,000.
Way over 2,000.
Yes, and all over the country. And I think the most humbling. Well, last year I was in Washington D.C. with the Chicago Honor Flight, and they asked me to bring my bugle and play taps at the World War II Memorial, which was very humbling and very honored. But I think the most important thing for me is 2016. I was asked to play taps at the American Cemetery in Normandy, France. And that was just so humbling. I mean, you really have to be emotional to do that. And then you overlook 9,000 graves thinking all these young men gave their life for America. But more importantly, how the French honor America by what they do over there.
I was watching Steve Hartman. I don't know if you ever see him on the Sunday morning show on CBS. And it was a lady in France who had lost her husband. And it turns out her husband was a pilot, and he was flying over a city in a town in France. And he, instead of jumping from the plane, he stayed and diverted the plane from hitting the town. They remember, they honor him every year. Every year they have a ceremony for him. Yes. They walk out to his grave. It's a beautiful thing. And they all talk to his wife about what he meant to them. And they never forget, do they? Because they even got emotional during the ceremony. What was it, 60 years later, talking about this young man who saved this village in France, says how much it means to them.
Oh, absolutely. And the American Cemetery in Normandy is actually maintained by the American Park District. And then France gave them that option to take care of, and they do very, very well. But it is very humbling. The cities around the cemetery there in Normandy are very respectful of Americans, as with the one in Italy and the one in Holland. The one in Holland really touched me because it was in November of 44, I think it was, and the English, Canadians, and Americans all landed in Holland to free the Dutch from Nazi rule. Well, there's a cemetery there with American Cemetery with 5,200 graves. And 3 times a year, the citizens in that little town go put fresh flowers on every veteran grave.
Is that right?
And if they can, they've sent back notes to America to the families, like, we took care of your Uncle Bob or grandfather Tom or whatever it may be. But how interesting how these people respect, and they understand if it wasn't for Americans or the English and Canadians, there wouldn't they'd be speaking German.
Right, exactly. Very good. We're talking to Mike Embrey about various issues. Now, the one near and dear to your heart, of course, is the Veterans Fund Recognition Committee. Tell us about that, because I don't want you to rest on your laurels, but let's talk about some of the projects you guys have already done. The DeKalb Veterans Recognition Banner Project. Tell us about that.
Well, it really started 2021 when the World War I clock needed repaired. And the Rotary
Club... folks that don't know, that's the clock at First in Lincoln Highway, right?
Correct. It was first was at Third.
In the middle of the street, right? Before?
In the middle of the street and got hit by a truck. And so they decided to move it. And so in 2021, the Rotary Club decided to raise money to get it working again, and which was like $12,000. It was not a cheap project. And the thing was interesting is this club took on a major task like that. Well, a lot of social clubs are declining. How long they're going to be in, who knows? But,
right.
You know, the Rotary, the Lions, the JCs are gone, and some of the others. And former Mayor Smith and I got together, and I thought, we need to find a way to raise money to make sure we keep these kind of memorials alive. So in October of 23, we started the DeKalb County Veterans Recognition Fund. And the goal with that is to raise $100,000 to be able to keep these memorials alive, all through DeKalb County, not just the city of DeKalb.
And we want to mention, you mentioned that former Mayor Jerry Smith, also Michael Coughlin, right, from the committee, Ron Lofton, Paul Jurdy, if I'm saying that right?
Paul Jurdy, correct.
And Tom
Pisapia. And then we had some new ones just joined, Don Wexel from the Daughters of the American Revolution, Willie Colser, who is the commander of the Genoa American Legion. They've all joined our board. And the goal is just to, keep it light. We're looking for younger people. That's what we're doing. I hate to say that we're getting a little old, but no, I choose to say we're getting a little mature, but we need some of those younger people.
Well, you guys say it so well here. The goal is to ensure that veterans and their families in the greater DeKalb County area receive the recognition and the honor they deserve. So I think that's a great way to put it. Also, the Vets Way. Now, I was just walking down Vets Way yesterday with the banner saying, tell us about that and how that came about.
Well, we wanted to do more to let people know that we care about the city. Well, we did put the banners up, and that was in 2018. And so Jerry Smith and I decided, how can we get more people to recognize this community? So we actually, John Pappas put flags up on the corner of First and Locust. And it was kind of funny. He talked to Tom Doherty. He said, I like to put a flag up. And Tom Doherty, being a Marine, we have to argue with the dang Marines. And he said, well, you have to have Marine flag and American flag. So when John Pappas said, we'd like to do that, he called me and I said, no, if we don't put all the flags, don't put any except the American. And he said, okay. So he actually paid for all the flags for the veterans' flags on that corner.
It looks great, too.
It really does. It's a great way to, and I said, you know what? Locust is perfect. So we ended up rebranding Locust Street as Honorary Veterans Way. Again, just to let people know that we really care about our city and we really care about our veterans. And as you get off I-88 coming in on Peace Road, you'll see the Welcome to DeKalb sign, and underneath it there's a sign, a veteran-friendly city. So we're really trying to push that. And we're the only one that I know of, I pushed very hard to have reserved parking spaces in the downtown for veterans, which we do.
And we even have a Space Force flag, though. I know the one at the Elks is a Space Force. Now, I was going to mention you because you and I were talking about the military and the music, and one of my favorite events, things that happen at a Memorial Day or Veterans Day, when they play the music, and if that's your branch, stand up when you hear your song. And of course, Acres Away Boy, and of course, You with the Air Force. Tell us about those songs, the Air Force song. That doesn't go that far back. Well, the Air Force only started after World War II, right?
1947.
Yeah.
The United States Air Force started, and they have their own song, and as does the Coast Guard, and obviously the Marines, the Navy, and the Army. And as of March of 24, Space Force has their own song.
Oh, there is? I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, so they do have their own song. And a lot of people keep saying, well, that's not a real branch. It is a real branch. Started in 22. It was President Trump authorized to have that. And it is active, and people really stop and think about it. Our Air Force can only go a certain height, skywise,
right?
40,000 feet or whatever. Anything above that is beyond their capabilities. So they now have this group of people who understand spacecraft and all the things that might happen above what we can fly a plane at. So Space Force started, and we were lucky that a lot of Air Force people transferred, a lot of Army people, and especially in the technical computer side, they transferred into it.
It's really fascinating stuff. I mean, all you got to do is look at the history of World War II when they were, designing the bomb in the University of Chicago. I mean, a lot of things are going on that we're not aware of. So that's great to know. Now, also, we have the reserved parking spaces for veterans. That's an interesting thing, but it's a great thing. Tell us about that, because so many veterans came back injured, missing a limb, and the least we can do is allow them to have a good parking spot.
Well, there's quite a few veterans you'll see with handicap stickers and whatever, and we try and, the handicap spots are taken, so we really wanted to add parking spaces reserved as close as we could to certain parts of town. And by the way, a lot of other businesses jumped on the bandwagon. Heartland Bank, several of the banks got, several of the businesses got. You'll find that Lowe's and other companies have added reserved parking for veterans only. So, and they're closer to the handicap or to the main doors.
Right, that's a great thing to be. And then we talked about the clock, restoring the clock. Because it's so sad that clock sat there with, obviously the one that was correct twice a day. But to see that fixed, it's really symbolic, isn't it, Mike? Instead of a broken clock representing the military personnel, we have a functioning clock.
Well, yeah, it was over 12 years, I think, or 10 or 12 years, it just sat there broken. And it was fixed by when Mayor Bessie Chronopoulos was in office, and she actually, at the city, they paid for it, but and then it quit working. But it was old works inside that clock.
Yeah.
And so the new clock is all modern works with still the old face and what have you, but it's all high tech inside that clock now.
That's great, boy. And it's a beautiful piece, that is, too. And then, of course, the Elks Veterans Memorial, we just touched upon that earlier. But again, as you come in on 88, what a great thing for people to see as they enter DeKalb, to see this beautiful flag display. And I love, especially at night when it's lit up like that.
Absolutely. And that was a direct, I think, correlation of my going to Normandy, France, and seeing that. And I said, I want to come back and do something in DeKalb, let people know that we are honoring our veterans. And the Elks were just wonderful to say, we'll give you the North land that they owned. And it has been a godsend for the Elks. People, other Elks come from other towns. They're just amazed about the quality of what they have there. And there's some great things happening. I know there's going to be a car show there at the memorial and the Elks Veterans Memorial. We'll have a Flag Day ceremony there. And this is kind of new, and I'm going to let it out of the bag here so people don't know.
All right.
A lot of people know that I started music at the Mansion years ago. And then they had a new park director came in, and he wanted to take over. And I said, that's fine. But they have now cut back to June and July only at Music at the Mansion, at the Elwood Mansion. So that gave August open. So the Elks are considering running music at the memorial on 3 Wednesdays in August, which will have bands. You bring your lawn chair out just like you do at Music at the Mansion. You bring your lawn chair, you sit in the grounds and enjoy a concert there. And that's what it was built for. I was hoping that memorial with that brick patio in front would be a place that they could have ceremonies or weddings or special events.
Sure.
And why not have a concert there?
Yeah. And of course, a dry martini if you're there as well.
Oh, we've done that. Yes, sir. And I had, because I know you were there with your lovely wife, and I proposed a new one for the Elks for fall called Old Fashioned Oktoberfest, featuring old fashions.
Oh, very good. Nice.
Yeah, so this should be kind of fun because there's a variety of old fashioned. I talked with the premier barmaid there, and she said, oh, yeah, there's brandy, there's bourbon, there's cherry, there's whiskey. And I said, well, what a perfect night.
Yeah, because I couldn't drink those big steins of beer. I'd be in the bathroom the whole time. So
Yeah, that's for sure.
Now you're raising money for this fund continuously, and I see a quote here from Dan Templin with the DeKalb County Community Foundation. This is kind of very unique, isn't it? This is kind of a first thing that you're doing here in terms of raising money for the foundation.
Right. Most of the time, the money has gone to a charity or to a scholarship fund or to some activity like that. And when we brought this to Dan's attention, he was all excited about it because it is a premier kind of activity, and the money going back to the community for a special project, and especially to honor the veterans.
And people that are listening now, how can they donate here? I see they can do so through the DeKalb County Community
They
Foundation.
go to the DeKalb County Community Foundation. They can write a check, and on the memo line put Veterans Recognition Fund or DeKalb County Veterans or whatever, and they will be acknowledged as a donation.
Well, hopefully we'll help to get more people aware of that because it's a wonderful thing. We're talking to Mike Embrey, of course, a longtime music director. Let's go back in early year. Mike Embrey, This Is Your Life, back into, now it says here you moved from Texas to the Ozarks in southern Missouri. Tell us about the story about your dad and he was running a truck stop and a gentleman couldn't pay for his gas. Tell us about it.
Some trucker came in and said, I need some gas and I don't have a lot of money, but, I've got this old trumpet. And my dad was a very compassionate man, and he knew the trucker needed to get point A to point B. We're right in the middle of nowhere in the southern Ozarks. And so he gave Dad the trumpet, and Dad gave it to me and said, here. And I thought, what is this? I had no idea. I didn't even know which end to blow in at the time. And so I started practicing with it a little bit. And
so you didn't have a book or anything? You just kind of were just
No, I just started by ear, and I'll share this story. Nobody knows this story, Terry, but I had a friend that lived about a block and a half away, and we weren't allowed to use the telephone because that was the old party line.
Sure.
You couldn't use the phone, So in order to, after school, to find out could we come out and play or we would go down to the railroad tracks just south of our home, and we'd play little bugle calls back and forth. So we'd know I can't come out, or I'll meet you at the park or whatever. And so I started making noise out of this little horn. I had no idea. And so then I went to, it was in junior high at the time. And
so you kept your little bugle, you kept your little horn with you.
Kept my little horn. And Dad said, you might as well try to join the band. And I said, oh, okay. I couldn't read music. I didn't have a clue. So I walked into the band director and I said, I'd like to join the band, and I had my own trumpet. It was welded together, Terry. Oh my God, it was tarnished and whatever. But he said, well, can you play something? Well, I started playing, and his eyes got real big. He said, oh my God, where'd you learn? I said, I don't know. We were just blowing notes. And so couldn't read a lick of music. And I played by ear, and then I later found out I had perfect pitch, so I could hear overtones and I could hear sound.
I saw that. So people either have or they don't have perfect pitch?
Correct. There's relative pitch, there's perfect pitch, and there's somebody that I wish I knew what the heck I was doing because I can't hear a thing.
That's what I mean.
People that say they can't sing in the shower because the shower gets embarrassed. So that's how it started. And
so then when you get into, is it grade school? When you're 13, somebody comes to you and offers you some money to play taps, and that's when the
it's a
tap
funny
started,
story. I got called to the principal's office, which that was not unusual in itself. I mean, I
live there myself.
A lot of times. But I get there, and there's this guy in uniform, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, my God, I'm too young to go in the military. And are they going to kick me out of school and put me into military school or something? And the superintendent said, Mike, this is Commander Smith from the VFW, and he'd like to ask you a question. He said, young man, can you play taps? And I always wanted to be more than I was. So I said, oh, sure, anybody can play taps, He said, oh, good. Then we have a lot of World War I veterans dying. We'd like you to play taps at these funerals. I'm thinking to myself, oh, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun,
No.
Then the superintendent said, well, if you would do that, Michael, I'll give you a day off from school, and the VFW will give you $2. I said, where do I sign up? I'm in,
Yeah, the day off of school might have done it, but the $2 certainly put it over
$2, I mean, that was that would get me, 16 candy bars at that point. So I started playing my first taps when I was 13 years old.
How about the first one? I mean, you must have been nervous as a wreck.
I had no idea. It was a guy who had like 7 kids, and they went to this funeral, and I had no idea the procedure and honor guard got up and they fired these rounds. First scared the crap out of me. I had no idea they were firing guns. You know? And then they said, now we'll have taps. And so I just hid behind a tree and played. And I said, oh my God, I hope it comes out. And it did. And so that was my first
wow.
opportunity.
Have you ever gotten so emotional that you couldn't finish the song? Because the song gets to me every time. Every time I say I'm not going to cry with this one, but you got a few notes in and...
When you do as many as I've done, you almost turn that emotion off, Terry. You have to say, you know, this is for the veteran and the family. And so it is very emotional. And as I said, I think in Normandy was probably the most emotional I ever got. I mean, I had to literally shut my eyes and play because it was so touching.
And I thought I read it's a longer song, isn't it, Mike? Do we only hear a rendition of it, or is it?
Well, no, there's only 24 notes.
24 notes, okay.
And by the way, for a lot of people, there are words to taps.
Yeah, okay, that's what you told me was the words.
There are words to taps, and how taps got started was during the Civil War. Taps was one of the many bugle calls we had. There was reveille, time to get up. There was yep, and there was chow hall call, and there was a charge, which is go to battle, and then taps was played to go to bed. That was going to bed at night. And it was during the Civil War when a Union Army officer found his Confederate son dead.
So Union officer finds his son on the other side dead.
His son was in the Confederacy, and they found him dead in the battlefield. And the officer said to the bugler, "We need to play something to honor my son." And the bugler had no idea what to play. I mean, there was no death song. So he played taps because the words of taps, the end of day, all is well. And that's how it got started.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Great thing. And how about the fact that if this guy hadn't come along and didn't have money for gas and given you that bugle, that horn, what you think your life would have been different? You think you would have been drawn to music?
You know, I don't know. It was never my forte. I always wanted to be in business like my dad, so I kind of emulated my father. But music has always come back to me. Every time I was going to go in a different direction, music came back to me.
Well, let's talk about a time you might have gone in a different direction. You get to Mount Prospect, you finally get here to Illinois, and at the age of 16, you're told you have perfect pitch. But then you have a choice between being on the football team or being in the band.
Oh, yes.
And tell us what influenced that.
Well, I auditioned for the band, and Dr. Ed Bolson, who became one of my mentors, said, "Oh my gosh, you were really..." I had no idea how talented I was. I mean, just because there was no really tutoring.
Yeah, you couldn't really gauge it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the band director there in the Ozarks was good, but he was not that good. In fact, he did tell my parents that this boy needs to get better training because he's way beyond me. So anyway, I transfer to Mount Prospect. And in my class in the Ozarks was 52 kids. My class in Prospect was 640.
Oh, wow.
So there were more kids in Prospect High School than my whole county when I was growing up. So anyway, I auditioned for the band director, and he got really excited. And he said, "Oh, my God, you're going to be first chair. I mean, you're really good." And I didn't have a clue. It was a duh.
Right, not your head.
Okay. So some young student came up to me and said, "The football coach wants to talk to you." Well, he had read my transcript and found I had letters in football, and our team was all conference, and so he brought me down. He said, "I'd like you to be on the football team." So I go back to the band director, and I said, I may not be able to get marching band. The football coach wants me on the football team. So the band director says, "I have two questions for you, and think about these before you answer. First question is, can he promise you a scholarship?" I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, I can. You're that good, and you don't know it." Which he did later on. He got me a trumpet scholarship at the University of Illinois. Second question, I want you to think real hard before you answer this. How many girls on the football team? Well, I stayed in the marching band.
Now, what'd you play back in the day? What would you play your freshman and sophomore year? What position?
The music?
No, football. No, what position in football did you play?
Oh, I was a tackle. I played tackle.
Okay, all right. So you weren't...
I was not.
You weren't a skilled player.
Anybody in small country town schools, they you had to be on the basketball team, which I was terrible at because I was short and chubby. You had to be on the track team, and
you had to be.
Oh yeah, you had to, because the small town didn't have a player.
Right.
and on track, I mean, I threw the shot put because I was too chubby to run. And there's no way I was getting over a hurdle. That was not going to happen. And so you had to do everything. You were in the band, the choir, the drama department, the speech team. I mean, you did everything in small country towns.
I like that. So then ultimately, like you said, you went to briefly to University of Illinois, and then you end up auditioning for the Air Force Band, which explain to us that these bands that we see, the various military bands, you have to audition for that, right?
Absolutely, and that's one thing people don't understand. When I ran out of money after my sophomore year in college, and I was with the scholarship, I had to work. My folks didn't have a lot of money, so I realized I was not going to be able to continue on, and all my music buddies were all going to Washington, D.C., because that's where the premier bands are, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard up in Connecticut. So they were all going there and as good as I was, I didn't think I was that good enough to get in a premier band. But I knew that there was a second premier band for the Air Force and a drum and bugle corps assigned to the Air Force Academy. So I thought, well, that's what I'll go out there because nobody knows about it. And I had been in a drum corps as a young man. I was with the Cavalier Drum Corps. And so I went out and they said, oh, God, we want you in the Corps, but we don't have any openings right now. But go ahead and sign up for the Air Force. And as soon as we got an opening, we'll transfer you out here. And that was my sure luck. I signed up for the Air Force, and 2 weeks later, I got my draft notice from the Army.
Oh, boy.
And I'm thinking, oh, my God, a little chubby boy over in Vietnam carrying a gun would not been a good sight. So I got a chance to, and again, it was back to music. I had never planned on it. In fact, when I was a music major, I was a jazz trumpet player. I was not going to be a teacher. But everything just keeps coming back to music in my life.
And you, at the time there, you had to pass security clearance, right? Because at one point you played in Richard Nixon's inauguration.
Right. Well, a lot of people don't know. Not only do you have to pass the musical audition, but you have to have top security clearance to be in one of the premier bands because you're exposed to presidents and legislators and kings and whatever.
And a close proximity, yeah. So
absolutely, you're right there. And if you didn't pass top security, I don't care how talented you were, you would not get in the band.
Very good. We're talking to Mike Embrey about various issues, including his time in the military and then with the military bands. And then you get out and then you go into junior college. Tell us about an incident in junior college where a young lady had said, the professor in psychology asked, how do people get rewarded in a life? And she replied, well, the Army gives out medals for killing people. And you stood up at that point, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I was taking class. I was in the GI Bill, and I'm sitting back in the back of this classroom with a bunch of veterans. And this young lady said that. And the teacher said, how do you reward people? And this little 18-year-old girl said, well, the Army gives you a medal for killing people. Well, I lost it at that point because we had been such abused when we came home from Vietnam. I mean, there was no parade. There was no thank you for your service. There was nothing. And it was
even worse than that. You were called baby killers. You were spit upon.
Absolutely.
For people that didn't know
even
about
when I was in the Air Force Band, people would throw beer cans at us at performances and chicken bones at parade. It was just not a great experience. So I stood up in the classroom and I said, young lady, that was the most stupid thing you could have ever said. I served in the United States Air Force. I have a chest full of ribbons, and at best I maybe killed a barfly. But I said, there was no killing in my job. Mm-hmm. So to make those kind of comments is really stupid. Well, the teacher kind of immediately jumped on, like she wanted to dilute this very quickly. And she said, well, let's move on, Well, it wasn't very long. I got called to the president.
Back to the principal's office. But
I got called back again. Here we are. I was really good at that, Terry. I knew the path. So the president of the university sent a student, and I had to go to his office. And I thought, oh, boy, I'm going to get kicked out of school. And I walked in, and he said, I heard what you said, young man. And he said, I said, well, you know what? That was really stupid, and it made us look bad. We're having a hard enough time. I mean, guys would meet a girl, and their parents wouldn't let her date him because he was a baby killer.
Wow.
Stuff like that. You couldn't rent an apartment if you were a veteran. I mean, there were just a lot of negativity. So he said, I understand what you said. And he said, and you're right. We don't need to malign our veterans. You guys you served your time, you're coming back, and you're trying to simulate into society. So with your accuracy in what you think and how you say, we're going to make you the official veteran coordinator for Harper College. So I immediately got a job and a title and a business card and an office. And there was a lot of work to be done. I mean, as I said,
believe it.
People came in and again, a lot of them said they couldn't rent apartments or it was just a challenging time. And we really wanted to bring to light that the veterans were just common students like everybody else.
And we have to remember that time because again, I was born in 1960, so I was a young man when this was happening, but I was not aware of how the Vietnam veterans were treated when they got home. So, but moving on here now. So now we get to Northern Illinois again. You're the youngest band director at the age of 27. But the part I find most interesting, although the drum corps, we don't have time to get into that, unfortunately. But tell us about you with the Chicago Bears, the NIU band and the Chicago Bears, and Papa George Harris. Boy, what a great story.
Well, it was kind of interesting. One of the things that, well, first of all, Dave, before that started, when I came here, the music department had disbanded the band. There was no, and the music students were told they cannot be in the marching band. I'm thinking, well, I'm in deep doo-doo now, you know. So I had gotten a phone call real quick from New Orleans. Was teaching a drum and bugle corps and writing music for a drum and bugle corps in New Orleans, and he said, I'd like you to write our show next year. And I said, well, I'm going to probably need the job. I'm going to get fired here. And he said, why? And I told him the story. He said, well, you tell the kids they join the marching band, they get to go to Mardi Gras. And I said, oh, that's not going to work. He said, oh, yes, it is. If you write our book free next year, our music, and come down and teach us, I'll send our drum corps buses up to get you. We'll house you and feed you, and you'll march a couple of Mardi Gras parades. I said, well, I'll do it. Well, sure enough, I put the word out in the Northern Star, and next thing I knew, I had kids coming out my ears. They were just, everybody wanted to go to Mardi Gras. You know?
Right.
A young college kid in Mardi Gras, are you kidding me? How much fun is that? So it was tremendously successful, and the band grew real quick. So I was pretty brazen, and again, young and dumb, I guess was we all were at that time. So I picked up the phone, and I called the Chicago Bears, and I said, can I speak to the person in charge of halftimes? And his name was Rudy Custer, who's director of entertainment. And he said, I said, Mr. Custer, I'm the new band director at Nova Illinois University, and I'll be honest with you, without a doubt, one of the finest college bands in the country, and I'd like to do a halftime show for the Bears. He said, okay. Well, now here we are again. I'm like, oh, now what do I do? I got to create a band that's going to go down and do a halftime show for an NFL team. Well, I use that as an incentive to draw in more kids. You know, if you join the band,
go see the Bears play. Yeah,
you get to, no. Not only that, I talked to Dr. Bill Minot, the president. I said, we have this opportunity, but I'd like to really showcase the kids. I would like to stay in Chicago the night before. So he said, I'll fund it. So we got to stay at the Palmer House the night before the Bears game.
Wow.
How cool was that? The kids just thought they'd died and gone to heaven.
I bet.
These are little country, a lot of them are country kids from Genoa and small, Geneseo and Kewanee. So anyway, we go down, we do the halftime show, September 30th, I think.
What year now?
Would have been 1975.
75.
And we did the show. The audience loved us. Everybody loved us. So we come home. On Tuesday, I get a phone call from Mr. Custer, and he said, Mike, George Hallis wants to meet you. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, no, I'm really...
You're in trouble again.
I'm here. This is the principal's office all over again, you know? I'm thinking, did they steal a football or a cheerleader? Well, you know, why would he want to see me, you know? And I had no idea. It was, you know, I had done NFL shows before with the military, but never on my own. So he said, can you come down Thursday? I said, absolutely, because I'm thinking I'm going to lose my job again. I went down, and their office was on Jackson, downtown Chicago at the time. So I went down, drove down to Chicago, and went up to the 17th floor. And Mr. Custer met me at the elevator, and he walked me into George Hallis's office. Well, first of all, I was humbled. I mean,
I bet. Oh, I thought you talked to him on the phone. He actually went to his office. Okay.
Oh, no. I went down. I was in his office, you know, because he wanted to see me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, here's Mr. House. He is NFL. He is pro football.
He is the NFL.
He is the man. And so while he was doing paperwork, and he kind of, and Rudy introduced me, and Mr. House looked up and said, young man, we got more phone calls from season ticket holders how entertaining your band was. We want you to come back every year. I said, okay.
Where do I sign?
Yeah.
And you did that for what, almost 10 years, right?
Well, the whole time. And not only that, they kept me on after I left NIU. I spent 25 years doing halftime shows for the Bears.
Okay.
All special events, special entertainment shows.
Sadly, I read you also did one in Green Bay, too. But we'll let you go.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Yeah. 1 year I
was... to play and carry the cheese at the same time.
I just did not understand what I was doing, so I ended up doing halftime shows for the Packers and the Colts and the Bears. And for the Packers, 3 years, only the Colts for one, because that was more than I can handle. And I'm going to tell you something. If you've never been to Green Bay, if you've never been to Lambeau Field, what a wild environment.
I bet.
They love football. Football is, that's it. And
well, we saw that with the last snowstorm they had out there, and all the season ticket holders were out there shoveling the stadium out there.
Well, this is funny. We did a game in December, in Green Bay, and that's when they're playing on Saturdays when after the season over in the
Sure.
college. So they had a Saturday game in Green Bay and a Sunday game in Chicago. So I had my part of my work team rehearse the Chicago site, and I went up to do the Green Bay site. And so the Saturday game of the Green Bay, it was like 26 below zero and snow and everything. There wasn't one empty seat, Terry. I mean, everybody was there in their snowmobile outfits and, drinking and having a great time. So I thought I couldn't wait. I mean, it was so cold, the instruments wouldn't work.
I bet.
So we said, okay, well, we're not going to do the halftime show. So, but I had to be there. It could have been 40 degrees or it could have been 26 below, which was 26 below. So I couldn't wait to get it. I was shivering all the way back to Chicago. And I'm thinking, oh, God, I'm never going to do this again. This is like so wrong. Well, ironically, I get back to Chicago. My team said, well, we had a great rehearsal today. We're ready for the game tomorrow. Well, the same weather was the next day and Sunday in Chicago. It was 26 below. 18,000 no-shows. I tell you, the Packers.
There you go.
So, and I don't want to malign anybody, but I don't know if you know this. Do you know how to keep a bear out of your backyard?
No.
Put in a goalpost. They don't want to be anywhere near a goalpost. Those bears.
All right. We're talking to Mike Embrey. Now, I don't know if this is your quote or not, Mike, but I give you a lot of kudos if it is. Be the person your dog thinks you are. That really, when I read that, I'm like, man, that's because my dog just worships me. And I'm thinking, boy, be that person that your dog thinks you are.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that your quote? Where did that come from?
Sometimes, and I don't know where I found it or I saw it or whatever, but it really resonated with me that, as bad as your day is or as sad as you might have been not to accomplish all you wanted, you come home, your dog is so excited. And he doesn't care, and I tongue-in-cheek laugh, and I said, here's a situation. If you put your wife in the trunk and your dog in the trunk and shut the trunk for about 5 minutes, open the trunk up and see who's happiest to meet you. Well, that'll kind of tell you what it's like, your dog.
And then finally, I want to talk to you about the honor flight that you went on. For folks that don't know, they're flying World War II veterans to Washington to see the Washington Monument and the World War II Veterans Memorial. What was that like for you? I know because you're so used to being on the other side of that, but it sounds like you just kind of sat back and enjoyed the process.
I did, Terry. It was kind of interesting because I'm used to producing big events and shows and drum corps shows and pageantry. I still work for ABC Disney. I do the big parade in Chicago. I'm used to productions. So for me to sit back and just be a participant was kind of a challenge in the beginning. But I thought, okay, they did ask me to bring my bugle. And I said, okay, they wanted me to play taps at the World War II Memorial. But to see how well that was orchestrated from the minute you arrive at Midway Airport at 4 a.m. in the morning, till they took you to the plane and they fed you and escorted you, and then there was a host with every veteran, and they pushed you through, and They get there, and I'm drawing a blank on the singer for the Blackhawks.
Wayne Messner?
Yeah, Wayne was there. Wayne Messner was there.
Oh, really? And one of your former students was there, was there not?
Oh, yes. Yeah, one of my former students, and a former person with the Air Force Drum Corps was there, too. So all of a sudden, Wayne sings God Bless America, and I mean, it was just so patriotic before he even got on the plane. It was.
And what were the people at the airport as they're watching this? Were they clapping for you guys? Were they patting you on the back? What was that? That must have been a moment.
At 4:30 in the morning, wasn't a lot of people.
Oh, it's 4:30. Okay.
So you get to D.C., and all of a sudden, when you get to D.C., there's a line full of people, police officers, fire people, army people, nurses. I guess there's a nurse society that dresses up in the old garb, and everybody was there shaking your hand and welcome you to Washington, D.C., and like, oh, this is really kind of cool. And to get there, and then we see all the attractions. We saw the Vietnam attraction. We saw the World War II. We saw many attractions while we were there. Finished the day out.
You had a companion with you, a young lady?
Oh, yes. I was extremely lucky. A very attractive lady. She was tall. She was like 6 foot. She towered over me. And I said, well, what did you do in the military? She said, I was in the military. And she was a jet fighter pilot for the Air Force.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, how did she fit into
the cockpit?
That cockpit. She said, oh, it was tough at times. And just a sweetheart of a lady. And we bonded, and we've still are friends today. And so while you're in D.C., you have a host with you the whole time. Some people brought their host with them from Chicago. Others just picked one up there in D.C.
That's great. Well, I'm so glad you got to do that. I'm glad you got to sit back and enjoy that too. And
well, I'll tell you the best part, Terry. I'm going to take a couple seconds more, but coming back on the plane, you're exhausted. It's been a long day, and all of a sudden says, "What are the two words that veterans remember most by being in the military?" And I'm thinking, bar open. I'm trying to think what two words that. Well,
I lean towards bar open.
yeah. Well, the two words, especially for those who served overseas, was mail call. And what we didn't know as individuals, that Honor Flight Chicago had contacted all your family and asked them to contact people. And I had 72 letters.
Oh, wow.
Welcome me home. And I thought, oh my God, that was extremely touched my heart to see that people took the time to write, Michael, thank you for your service and welcome home. And I tell people that was the welcome home I never got from Vietnam.
I've been teaching my grandkids the power of writing a letter. I mean, you can text people all day long or email them, but you take time to sit down and write somebody a letter. It just means so much. And you get a little rush when you see in the mailbox, you see a letter in the mailbox.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, another great quote from you, we'll finish up with this one. The walk through the terminal airport, the walk through the terminal was the welcome home parade we never got. And I thought that was a great quote because you never did get a welcome home parade.
We never did get a parade. And I swear to God, there was over 1,000 people at Midway Airport when we arrived home at 8 p.m. at night. And there were two bands. There was a bagpipe band. There was a brass band. So, I mean, it was unbelievable as you walked through. There were a lot of Navy recruits there to welcome us back from Great Lakes. And those that were ambulatory had a Great Lakes, well, every person, even I had a Navy recruit, a nice young lady with a Navy recruit. And they walked us through, and it was amazing. Families were there, and I had former students. My insurance man here from DeKalb was there. He had been on the honor flight before.
Give a name drop. Who's that? Or unless he doesn't want you to.
What am I drawing a blank here?
That's all right.
I can't think of it.
That's okay. It'll pop back.
Yeah.
And then to wrap things up here, too, let's remind people if they want to donate to the DeKalb County Veterans Recognition Fund. The best way to do that is what, Mike? Just to...
Well, actually contacting DeKalb County Community Foundation, and you can either call or you can write through one of the links. So you can go online and say, I'd like to make a contribution to the DeKalb Veterans Fund. I mean, it can be just as brief. As long as it says veterans on it, it will come to us. And make a donation, a check. And we're finding a lot of actually people that are passing away are saying, we'd like to donate to your fund as on behalf of our loved one who is a veteran. But I do have one last thing to share with you.
Please.
We're continually trying to raise money. And so the New Values magazine actually has helped us. And we're going to have a fundraiser at Texas Roadhouse on May 14th. It's a Wednesday. 10% of your bill will go to our fund.
Okay.
And you just have to have the little coupon out of the magazine, or you can pick a coupon. We have coupons all over town. But they won't give you we won't get the 10% if you don't pass out the coupon or let them know.
Oh, so it's Wednesday night, again, from 3 to 10 p.m. at the Texas Roadhouse there. Just mentioned the DeKalb County Veterans. I'm sure if you even don't have the thing, if you mention the DeKalb County Veterans Recognition Fund, but have this.
We're actually going to have some people standing out there handing out those cards.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So that way they can do it. And so, again, it's exciting. There's so much yet left to do. I know we haven't touched on everything, but...
No, okay, I could go hours with you. And then I also want to mention the Memorial Day Parade and program is coming up on Monday, May 27th there at the Elwood House Museum. And, of course, I'm assuming you'll be playing taps of that one? Or?
I'll be tapped. Mark will be there as well. Mark Baldwin.
We used to work with Mark. Fabulous guy.
He plays, and I do echo taps.
Oh, wow.
So, and last time we did it, or 2 times ago, people were crying like when they had never heard echo taps.
And let's lead on this note here, and just a 1-minute explanation. Your quote is, lead by example, but mentor by passion. What do you mean when you say that, Mike? Lead by example, but mentor by passion.
Well, you lead by the way you act and what you do. That sets the tone, but you need to mentor the young ones, other people, to be better than they are. And that's the thing that I really believe in. And as a teacher, that's what you really experience.
Well, let's leave it at that. Again, we've been talking with Michael Embrey. And Michael, thank you for your service and what you continue to do for our veterans. And let's keep that going. And you take care of yourself and keep driving my wife to the airport.
I will do that.
I don't know why you just don't sit back and relax, Mike, but I don't think it's in your nature to do that.
Well, I do have 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning open now. So
okay. We've been visiting Mike Embrey on podcast number 7, TD Ryan Unleashed.